So this is what you've been waiting for. You've seen it on the website. Maybe you've seen some pictures. But here's the thing. When I say ultra endurance athlete, many of you will picture that family member or coworker who loves to tell you about the recent marathon or how they've completed an Ironman. I know a family that has someone that likes to stand on a stage in a wetsuit, swim cap, and no socks. I hear he's a great guy, but awkward. Yeah, I'm that guy. That guy that's found a way to work endurance sports into every conversation. So much so that my family has issued a decree that I'm not allowed to wear the sweatsuit in the house anymore. I guess the thought of me answering the door to sign for a package is a little weird. But seriously, today's talk is not about the athlete that is swimming, biking, or running in triathlon. And they're not the ones pushing through 12-hour races or multi-day events in the endurance world. We're going to talk about a different kind of endurance. The kind without the race medals, the kind without the cheering crowds, and the ones that just show up quietly in everyday life. If you know by looking at the sign and seeing anything that I've put out there, we're going to talk about caregivers. But I think we need to define who a caregiver is. How many people right now believe you're in a caregiving role? Raise your hands. So maybe a quarter of you, maybe just over that. If we look at the numbers, we have 53 million Americans on the front lines caring for loved ones with chronic or disabling health issues. That number may not mean a lot, but that equates to about 1 in every 5 of you, which is probably pretty close to the number that I just saw there. But the truth of it, that only scratches the surface of what we're facing. See, the problem we're facing is so much more expansive than that. See, we have this false narrative that caregiving is mainly about physical care. But caregiving means so much more. When we broaden our understanding of what caregiving means, then we can better address the high levels of stress and burnout that caregivers are experiencing today. When I first mentioned to people that I wanted to help caregivers, I often heard, "Pete, that is great. I'm not really a caregiver." But then they would add, "I do have a friend who's right in the thick of it, and they're exhausted." I even had a guy once tell me that his wife was caring for her mother and she was overwhelmed. Here's the thing I think we all need to understand, that whether we think we are a caregiver or not, someone else may think we are. Think about that friend that's right in the middle of that storm. What is your role in their life? And here's the thing. If you provide any level of physical, mental, emotional, or spiritual support to someone, you are a caregiver. We are a caregiver. Which means if we realize that, the first fact, pause for a second. Once we understand that fact, that is the first step to navigating this caregiver journey with strength. By understanding that, then we can actually step in to help someone who needs support. So let me pull on that a little bit more. If you provide any support to someone, you're in a caregiving role. If you're smiling at this guy standing on a stage in a wetsuit and no socks, you're in a caregiving role. If you've listened to somebody vent, you're in a caregiving role. If you've prayed for or prayed with someone, you are in a caregiving role. The sooner we can understand that, then we can start to bring down this level of stress and burnout that we're all feeling, not only in the caregiving role, but just in life in general. Now, hopefully we've straightened out what a caregiver is and what our role is. For those of you wondering, okay, what's up with the wetsuit? Is there anybody here who doesn't know what this wetsuit's about? You've not seen any of my stuff? Okay, we'll get there. As a triathlete, this wetsuit protected me. It kept me warm and buoyant as I swam. But one thing I realized is that it's not very good. But the thing is, as I considered my time as an athlete and a caregiver, I realized that I wasn't only wearing wetsuits in races, I was wearing them in relationships too. And I believe I'm not alone. I think we all enter into relationships, and especially into a caregiving role, wearing a wetsuit. Not one made of neoprene, but one made of the kind of emotional armor that we zip up every time life gets hard. Every time we share in someone else's struggles. Every time we carry the weight for someone we love. Now, most days, we don't even realize what we're wearing it until the stress builds, until the demands of caregiving outweigh what we're prepared to give. Now, the thing is, when that happens, we then take a step back and we look and see that this caregiving wetsuit is stitched together by our past experiences, our expectations, and behaviors we have learned over time. Now, if I were to ask each of you what your wetsuit looked like if you were wearing one, they'd all be different. No two would look alike because they would vary by style, durability, and fit. And that's not by accident, because they're shaped by your story. So what are the typical wetsuits we see? We have the physical kind, the ones that allow us to get a lot done. We put them on when we're cooking, cleaning, lifting, doing all the errands. The problem is if we wear that wetsuit all the time, it's heavy, tends to wear on us, and we start to feel some exhaustion in our muscles. And the armor tells us, just keep going, you got this, until you just can't go anymore. Then we have the ones that are built under mental pressure. These allow also for us to get a lot done. The logistics, the schedules, the calendars, the checklists of activities. The problem is when we wear this one in every single relationship, it tends to wear us down. Our minds never turn off. And we think if we stop, then everything will fall apart. The other issue with this mental one that we wear all the time is sometimes we patch our emotional cracks with productivity because we just don't have time to feel right now. I'll worry about that later. I got to get this stuff done now. Then we have our emotional wetsuits. These allow us to connect with someone. And we're those strong ones, the listeners, we're there. The risk is if we wear that all the time in every single relationship, we may have a tendency to take on other people's pain so they don't have to feel it. And the outside may look pristine, but the inside can be stitched together by 1,000 small sacrifices in the name of love. Next, we have our cultural wetsuits, which are passed down by generation to generation, that tell us how we are supposed to act as a caregiver, that we must always put somebody else first, sometimes at the expense of ourselves. Now, is there anybody in here who's a healthcare professional? Yeah. So for my fellow healthcare professionals, ours may look good on the outside, other than maybe some branding of who we work for, but they all have a double burden. Our professional role and our personal responsibility, especially for caring for a loved one. So no matter how your wetsuit was formed, over time the wear and tear begins to show. The stress, the exhaustion, the impossible balancing act all create tiny rips in the fabric. And instead of patching them, or instead of acknowledging them, we patch them. And if you're like me or most men, You duct tape it, because that fixes everything. We cover up our exhaustion by taking on more responsibility. We bury our doubts under layers of self-sacrifice or more duct tape. We mask our grief by staying busy, doing more, never stopping long enough to feel the weight of it all. Now, at first, that allows us to keep going, to keep showing up. But over time, that only restricts us and isolates us and keeps us from fully connecting with those we care about. So now you're saying, Pete, that's all doom and gloom. I'm here to tell you these wetsuits are appropriate. We need to wear them at certain times. The problem is I think we face different relationships wearing the same wetsuit all the time. Everything is physical because that's what we're good at. But maybe that physical wetsuit's not necessary in that moment. The analogy I use, if I'm going to swim off the coast of Alaska, I need a pretty thick wetsuit. And I'm sure each one of you can name relationships that you have that you better armor up when you walk in that door. And whether it's physical, mental, or emotional, or maybe even the extra spiritual armor over the top that protects you, because it's going to be pretty rough and pretty choppy getting into that relationship. But if we're wearing that same wetsuit, if I'm going to go swim off the coast of Key West, I'm just going to overheat, and that's not going to be productive. So how do we look at what we're wearing and realize, how can I show up better for this other person? But we're going to do a little exercise here, and I'm going to have you just reflect on, are you wearing a wetsuit? If you are, how was it formed? Where did it come from? So I'm going to invite you to close your eyes and just kind of look out. We're standing at the water's edge. We're kind of looking down at this wetsuit, and I want you to think, which of those things resonated? Is it mostly physical? You're the one that gets things done physically in relationships. Is it mental? Handle all those logistics. Is it emotional? You're the one that's always there to listen to someone. How about spiritual? Is it spiritual as in your skin, the underlay, or are you throwing on the extra armor over the top and just covering up what you were wearing underneath? The next is, how was it formed? Some past experiences that led to this? Maybe it's some expectations that you've placed on yourself or others have placed on you. How about behaviors maybe that you've picked up over time? And then let's take a look at the patching. Do you have one patch? Or are you a NASCAR driver with patches all over the place? And as you sit there, what's the weight? Does it feel heavy? Is it tight? Maybe it's comfortable. Maybe yours has been custom fit for you. But what I'm going to ask now is there anybody who's willing or thinks that maybe they need to take this wetsuit off? Okay, you can open your eyes. Does anybody, and I'll ask for a show of hands if you want to, if not, that's okay, that realize maybe you have been wearing a wetsuit in certain relationships? I see a couple nods, yeah. So I want you to look at the person next to you and say, oh crap, what did we just get ourselves into? Yeah. If you've ever wondered what it's like to be an endurance athlete, welcome to the start of every Ironman race, because that's what it feels like. So when we think of endurance, we think of long hours training, pushing past our limits and crossing finish lines. That it's all about grit, resilience, and strength. But what if endurance meant something different? See, as a physical therapist of 32 years, I thought I knew caregiving. And as an athlete that has run marathons, a full distance Ironman, and I've even run 116 miles in a weekend on a 1-mile course. If that doesn't epitomize what caregiving is, I can't think of a better explanation than that. But here's the thing, is that those worlds collided and I became a family caregiver. And that tested me in ways no race ever challenged me. Over a 3-year period, I wasn't just required, I had the opportunity to take extended family leave 4 times to care for loved ones as they navigated unexpected health events. Those events not only challenged me, they changed me. They led me on a career path to become a wellness life coach and set out on a mission to help the true ultra-endurance athletes, the caregivers, the ones that don't get the race medals or hear the cheering crowds or the recognition that they deserve. The other thing is, every race I entered was my choice. I knew the training, time, and distance to get to the finish line. Those going through caregiving and the ones going through the event and their caregivers don't have that luxury. It just happens. 1 minute we're immersed in everyday life, and the next thing you know, we're rushing up to the water's edge for a multi-day, often multi-year race we did not choose to enter. How many of you were able to pencil in when your next caregiving situation was going to be? Yeah, it just happens. And the reality is it happens, and what do? We just show up, because that's what we do as caregivers. So how do we navigate that? Look at the person next to you and say, what just happened? Yeah, that's how it is. So now the call to caregiving starts differently for everyone. Sometimes it's an earth-shattering cannon boom, boom, dad collapsed, call 911. Other times it's a quiet whisper that says, I'm sorry to tell you, but you have cancer. Now, whether it is loud or quiet, we're still left wondering what just happened. How am I going to navigate this? One of the things that we need to do is to develop a team around us, and we're going to talk about that. And we talked about, sorry, every time I bend down, it's getting louder. Talked about this wetsuit. So we need to figure out what are those things that we're bringing to that situation, because we don't have time to prepare or train. Like I said, in the endurance world, I knew the training time and distance to get to the finish line. We don't have that luxury in caregiving. So my start of my 3-year race into caregiving, my mom in February 21 underwent back surgery, and I thought, well, yeah, they're in Buffalo, I'll just come in 3 weeks. I can control when I start my race. And every conversation I had with my mom, she became less and less coherent. And I began to not being able to focus at work. Marissa can tell you, I was so distracted, I wasn't productive at work. I'm too busy trying to think, if I were up in Buffalo, I could have prevented all the complications she had, because I'm Mr. Fix-It. I'm the one that can get things done. And the problem was they had given my mom so much pain medicine in the hospital, they had to give her 2 doses of Narcan to get her out of her drunken stupor. That was it. I was finally done. I said, I need to go to Buffalo. The problem was, I went to Buffalo and I packed lightly. I bought my professional wetsuit that was task-oriented. Get things done. I came in, a whirlwind, rearranged their house, moved my mom's bedroom from her second floor to the first floor. I cleaned. I did all the things that I thought I needed. I sat in the hospital with my mom, and I was physically present with her, but emotionally, I was guarded because I was feeling some guilt, obviously, for not being there. And mentally, I was back at my parents' house just cleaning their house. After a month, I returned back to North Carolina, and I get a text from my dad. It was about a month later. Mom's pissed. That was meant to be loud. Mom was pissed. Mom was pissed because Mom got down to her sewing room in her basement and couldn't find anything. I cleaned so much, she couldn't find any of the things that were there. See, the problem was I came in again with my professional wetsuit, task-oriented, covering up my emotions, covering up my guilt. And I tried to force my dad. I said, put her on the phone. My mom wouldn't talk to me for 5 days. 5 days of silence, 5 days of reflection. I finally forced my dad to put her on speakerphone. And what's funny is my dad can't get the phone on speakerphone fast enough. But for 5 days, he forgot where the button was. Because I'm sure it was because he was my accomplice, the grief that my mom was giving him. But finally, I forced him to put her on speakerphone, and she yelled before he can even get a word in. She said, I trusted you. And she was right. I betrayed that trust. I wasn't there. Again, I came in with the wrong wetsuit. See, my mom didn't need a clean house, even though Dad did. My mom needed me to walk beside her, to sit with her, to listen to her, to connect with her. So in that moment, I realized that this wetsuit needed to come off. The problem is, it's not so easy. It's not so easy. I got patching. I have tape there. I have things, wounds there that I didn't want to face. And to be honest, it's hard. But thankfully, because of some of the men in this room helped me to see my wounding. Through Mark's Men, I was able to figure out what some of that stuff was, and I have to realize that this was hot. I need to take this off. But, sorry about that. I have to rip the tape off. I have to rip the Band-Aid and uncover that wound, which means I have to do some healing. But in that, that's a little bit better. I don't know about you, I'm hot. But even then, getting it to here, well, that should be good enough. I don't have to worry about it. I'll just stay like this. But there came a point where I needed to take this off. So we got to work it, try to shift it. Be patient. Whew, that feels better. But also hope not for wardrobe malfunction. We don't want to lose anything here. But getting this off, there was freedom in taking this wetsuit off. The ability to connect with those that I care for and realize that this professional wetsuit was actually getting in my way of connecting with those people that I needed to care for. So now that we have this wetsuit off, we talked about it was formed by past experiences, expectations, and behaviors we have learned over time. Hard part was keeping it off. Even though it's hot and it's uncomfortable, it was easy to want to put it back on. It's like getting dressed in the morning. We don't even think about it, we just put it back on. I can take that off too. Whew. So in December, mid-December of this past year, I went up to Buffalo to help my mom come out of her rehab. She was in the hospital, went to rehab. She had another back procedure. And my plan was just to go up for 5 days. And I show up and my dad was in congestive heart failure and AFib. So on the same day that my mom says, I want to come home from rehab, I'm taking my dad to the emergency room and sitting in the emergency room with my dad, getting him admitted to the hospital. Thankfully, I have a brother that lives there, so he brought mom home and I sat with dad. My dad spent 12 days in the hospital, came home for a few days only to go back in again. And one of the things is that when I was there, we're going to talk about an incident that happened where I almost put this wetsuit back on. It was day 28 of my 30-day stay in Buffalo. And my last real task was to take my mom to go to her doctor's office. To go to a doctor's appointment. And I had running around all day long. I had done laundry. I had done the cooking. My dad needed some physical help, so I'm helping my dad physically to do all the things he needed to instead of in and out of the bathroom as well. And my mom went to her bedroom, got dressed, and when she came back in, I come upstairs, and she points at her bare feet. Socks! One word. Not a please, not a thank you. Socks! Yeah. I could probably do a poll of how you would respond to that. I'm exhausted. I took a deep breath. Thankfully, I was a marksman at this point. Took a deep breath, and I just looked at her. And I could have gone down so many caregiving rabbit holes. If I was the fixer, I would have had socks already on the couch for her. That's old Pete. He would have done that. If I was the enabler, I would have ran off to her bedroom, grabbed her socks, gave them to her, and said, okay, let's get dressed, we'll go to the car. If I was the detached observer or avoider, I would have just looked at her, rolled my eyes, and said, seriously, I gotta go get my own socks. You figure it out, and then I'll see you in the car. Or I could have been the jokester, the deflector, and say, hands driving, feet leaving, I'm going back to North Carolina. I'm done. But I didn't. Thankfully, I paused. We have a choice to react with emotion, anger, fear, sadness, exhaustion, or to respond with purpose and connection. In that moment, I chose honesty, purpose, and connection. See, 2 years ago, I probably would have blasted her because she's ungrateful, the way that she had said it. And that's not on her, that was on me. But this time, I was able to empathize with her because there were days we didn't know my dad was coming out of the hospital. And my dad is primary caregiver for my mom. My dad is an enabler. He does everything for my mom. More than he needs to do, which we'll talk about how we've tried to change that. But in that moment, our goal was to get her to be more independent. But I understood that there was some emotion up underneath that. And so I went over and I said, Mom, I love you, but I'm exhausted. What is it that you can help me do in this situation? And she said, oh, I think I have socks in my bag here. She reached down, grabbed a pair of socks out of her bag, and put them on. So, in that moment, and then I went and got my own socks and got my own shoes on, and then we went to the doctor's appointment, and then I finally came home after 30 days. You get to watch me, Mr. Rogers, put my shoes on. So now that we have this wetsuit off, we've recognized some of the things maybe we're bringing to the table. We've talked about some behaviors. So how do we move forward from this point? The second step in navigating the caregiver journey with strength is to reset, to reset what we're doing, to take a look and say, what we've done is maybe not working. How can we move forward in a calmer, I guess, in a better mode? And how we do that, we start by looking at gifts and talents. We look at the team that we have. So that's what I did with my parents, and I think that's one of the things I'm going to recommend is we have a habit of doing things for people and not actually looking at the strengths. You know, of a business, we have to look at our employees. We've got to make sure everybody's in the right role and that they're doing the right thing. So one of the things that we did is we looked at mom's strengths and dad's strengths as how can we move forward to maybe take some of the things off of dad and allowing mom to do a little bit more. See, thankfully for me, I have two incredible parents. Very diverse though, which you're going to hear in a second. And I was able to get some talents from them, and luckily God gave me some talents to be able to take the complex and spin it around and look at it and try to find commonality in it, which has come in very helpful being married, being a parent, and also being a paid caregiver. So my dad is a retired engineer. Any engineers in this room? Very methodical, yeah. My dad, the third tray of the dishwasher, did you know that all the utensils are earmarked for certain spots and they all have to face the same direction? Ours didn't come with that manual that said the spoons are here and the forks are here and the knives are in attention here. My dad, that's my dad. So when my mom became sick years ago, my dad responded like you would expect him to, with precision and accuracy. My dad has lists and checklists and color-coded calendars. If there is a mission control for caregiving, that is my dad. He's at the helm. But he'll be the first to admit, when you take a step back, there's fear up underneath there. Because for my dad, if he misses something, my mom may go to the hospital, and my dad actually sees himself as a failure. That he failed. He did not keep the project going. He did not keep my mom out of the hospital. We've had issues we've had to talk about that mom is not a machine. Mom has free will, but we're still working on that part. Now, my mom is a retired art and special ed teacher. Little bit different. My mom's a creative. She would much rather create or paint the pill organizer than actually use it some days. That's the world that I have to try to manage as their son. And what we've done over the years is to use mom's creativity and figure out how can we get her to take on more of the role. See, my dad used to pick out my mom's clothes for her because she couldn't go down in the basement where their clothes were. So we had to think about that. We have a creative who doesn't get the opportunity to choose out what she even wants to wear on a daily basis because my dad's picking it for her. So we got to the point where all those clothes need to come up and go in the mom's room in the dresser where mom can pull them out and she can have some ownership and some independence. It's a simple thing, but we don't think about it in the process because we're just getting it done. A week before the sock incident, as we call it in my family, and that's really what we do call it, it's the sock incident. And my dad was in the hospital at this point, and my mom, it's so hard again, I would run out in the morning to go to the hospital to be with my dad, and I can't help myself checking over my mom's work. I see you did your blood pressure, I see you did your vitals. How come your weight's not down here? And I had to take myself to step back to allow mom some responsibility of that. But one day, I kind of hesitated and I'm like, Mom, what's really going on? Why is this so difficult to be able to do this? And in that moment, my mom paused. And she said, well, what if the numbers are bad? What if no matter what I'm doing, I'm getting worse and I'm going to have to go back to the hospital? See, in that moment, we realized that the hesitation and the stubbornness that she had was out of fear. She also had some fear underneath there. The numbers to her weren't just data points, they were a scoreboard that was flashing at her saying, I'm losing. So I think we have a habit, again, I'm going to use I statements. I've had a habit in the past to look at the task and look at what's needed to get done and realize there is always something up underneath there that we need to explore and to be curious about, to see what's really going on. Where is this resistance coming from? So I knelt down next to my mom and I said, Mom, you know, the numbers are only the numbers. They don't define who you are. And no matter what happens, we'll get through this together. See, my mom in that moment was seen. She was heard. She knew that I wasn't just going to force something on her. And in that moment, we became more of a partnership. It became more about not doing for, but being with. When I first asked you, if you came in and signed online, I asked you whether you were a caregiver, care receiver, both, or neither. How many caregivers, how many people said you were a caregiver? Okay, how many are care receivers in here? Okay, how about both? How many both people do we have? We got 4 boths. How about neither? We have any neithers in here? Okay. Hopefully you understand, what's the correct answer? Both. We are in a partnership. We need to understand that every relationship is a partnership, and both. So even if you didn't get both, just like an endurance event, there's always another mile. There's another mile and another mile and another day to course correct, to reset, to get things right, to just keep going. So even though we get everything right, things go bad. Has anybody been a caregiver or really in life where all of a sudden you're going along and something changes? Is there anybody in here who hasn't had any of those moments? So in triathlon, we plan for contingencies. We plan that when things go wrong, that we're prepared. For triathlon, they're called bike clinics. And what happens is we ride around on your bike, and if you get a flat, pretending you have a flat on the course, you need to change your tire as fast as you can so you can get back on course. Life has those, we just don't pay attention to them. Those are the training moments that we have that get us through to the next day, to whatever is going on. So we're going to talk about an incident. You get to see, since it's on the stage, I got to put it on. In December, when I was home with my dad, again, I told you he was in the hospital, and he came home on December 28th, and on New Year's Eve, I go to give my dad his medicine, and he passes out. So I have to call 911. And as I'm sitting in the hospital, in the ER with my dad, I'm watching the ball drop at Times Square, wondering, what is this course going to look like? What is up ahead of us? Fast forward to New Year's Day, mid-afternoon. I'm up in the hospital room with my dad, waiting for some tests to be done. And I get a call from my aunt that my dad's younger brother had just went into cardiac arrest in their house and was brought to the same ER my dad was in 15 hours earlier and passed away 4 floors below my dad. In that moment, I had a flashback to mile 20 of a 56-mile bike ride at Ironman, Maryland, where torrential rains and relentless winds coming down. I am white-knuckling my handlebars as the wind's blowing me all over the place. And I had one of those Lieutenant Dan moments, you know, from Forrest Gump, where he's hanging onto the mast, screaming at God, "Is that all you got?" That was me on that course. And as I'm battling the elements, I'm battling my thoughts, and I'm having a conversation with God. Something shifted. The weather didn't change, the conditions didn't improve, but I remembered my why I was in that race. And it wasn't about the finish line, it wasn't about the race medal. I was riding for a childhood friend of mine, Paula, who had recently crossed the finish line of life after a race with breast cancer. Flashback, I'm sitting with my dad, holding my phone in my hand. And I couldn't help think of that moment. And I resumed my conversation with God. And again, I was reminded that faith is not the absence of storms, it's who's in your boat with you, both vertically and horizontally. And my why was my dad. That was my only focus of what Dad needed in that moment and what I could do. So that why made things possible. If you ask any endurance athlete why they do something, they can tell you. If you ask a caregiver, sometimes they can't tell you. It's just a duty. It's something that they do. They've lost sight of what the actual activity we're doing because it's so task-oriented. So my challenge is to think about the why. Why are we in this situation? For me, I have a mission statement. How many people in here have a mission statement? I know my marked men brothers do. A mission statement is something that anchors you in the ground. Anybody who has a business or a nonprofit has a mission statement that tells people how you're going to act. My recommendation is that we all have a mission statement when it comes to relationships, and they shouldn't be different missions for different people. Like the same mission statement that you have for your mom or dad or cousin or brother, they should all be the same. And we don't always do that. We end up acting differently with different people. So I challenge you to have a mission statement that's rooted in whatever your foundation, whatever it is that you're trying to make this relationship look like. For me, as a marked man for Christ, I co-create a world of love, trust, and focus by caring for others with kindness and purpose and walking with humility and empathy to the foot of the cross where Jesus provides healing and hope. That's my mission statement that grounds me. Again, you don't have to have necessarily a faith-based one, but you need to have a mission statement and know why are you in this situation, okay? So, the third step in navigating this caregiver journey with strength is replenish. We need to refill physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. We cannot pour from an empty cup. And we, as caregivers, are some of the best at pouring our cup out without ever letting anybody fill us up. It's like we're afraid to show how little fluid we have in our cups. And the way we fill up our cups is by a team. When I compare endurance and caregiving, I think there are 3 roles that we all need to have. Our pacers. They are the people that help us, support us when we're exhausted. They get us from 1 mile to the next or one day to the next. They're the ones that you call at midnight to say, my heart's racing, I'm not sure what I'm going to do. Can you help me? They're the ones that come and get you to that next mile marker. Support crew. They're the ones that handle the logistics. They do all the things behind the scenes, the schedules, help people coordinate meals and doctor's appointments. We need somebody in that role that's going to help that. Maybe multiple people in that role. Then we have the fans. These are the support crew. The people with the signs. The call, text, say a prayer people that just reach out and say, hey, thinking about you, how are you doing? Well, where do you see the most people on a course? Yeah. Where are the loneliest miles? In the middle. We are great in the start of a race. We are great at the end of a race in life. We are not good in the middle. So the challenge is think about, again, we're going to talk about these roles, but already hopefully that's stirring some things about who are those people that we have that provide that are fans to us, but who can we help somebody else? So if we think about these 3 roles, pacers, support crew, and fans, think about your network. Who do you have that's assigned to those roles? Who are those people that you can call at midnight to say, I need help? And they're going to be different. So you think about physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. I know those people that I can call when I physically, like I'm run down and I need someone to go for a run. Hey, Walt, we need to go for a run. I know if I need somebody emotionally, I know who that person is that's going to help fill up my cup, and mentally and spiritually as well. When I decided I wanted to do Ironman Chattanooga back in 2019, I reached out to 2 people. And before I could even finish, Walt, what'd you say?
You got me at hello.
Yeah. My ride or die people. We all need ride or die people. And the other thing is, these roles are very fluid. You think you're in one role, but somebody is doing something for you. So in that same race, there was another guy, Joe. So Joe said the same thing. He had me at hello. It was Joe's first triathlon. We finished the swim, we finished the bike. We come into transition to go out on the marathon portion of the triathlon, and I can see Joe struggling. And I had a choice to just leave and go do my race because I'm feeling good, or I could stop and wait for him. Not one of these, hey, you good? I'll see you, and leave. I waited and something told me to wait. And we did the whole marathon portion together, 5.5 hours of that. And the amazing thing about this, if we're going to look at giver, receiver, you would think I was the one that was pacing Joe and helping him get from the tree to the sign to the mile marker. But to be honest, he was also pacing me, because I may have finished with a better time, but I also may have not finished that race at all. So we paced each other, and the beautiful part of it is in that struggle, which I'll call it, getting through a race, is we were able to connect and talk about where the high points, the low points were, and actually be present in the moment. In caregiving, we lose sight of being present in the moment so many times because, again, we're so oriented on the getting to the next mile marker, getting to the finish line, and we forget to connect to the person next to us. And we connected with each other, we connected with the other participants in the race. I have some still people that I still connect with from many of the races I've done, that in different parts of the country that we suffered together during the race. So I encourage you, as you think about it, who's on your team, and then whose team are you on? Who have you waited for when you could have just continued to go on? And who's waited for you when you've needed it? And as you think about the teams that you're on for other people, if you're pacing everybody, do not expect to last. You cannot pace everybody. There needs to be different people. You can't be everything to everyone. We need to be fluid and hop into all these different roles. And part of the thing that I have seen, unfortunately, over the years as a home health PT, I've seen many families destroyed over expectations of well, they're not here, they're not doing what I need them to do. The thing we need to ask is, do they have capacity to take on that role? If I'm going to do another 100-mile race, I know who's going to pace me and who's going to be my support crew. And I know who I can pace and who I can't pace. We need to be honest and open about who is it that we can have on our team, but what roles are they in, and are they in the right roles? If not, we need to move them around. And there's no judgment in that. That's not failure, it's us being honest. Because if you think about it again, this caregiving experience, as I said, we're all caregivers to each other in some capacity. So if we're feeling any overwhelm or stress, let's figure out who we need to help us. And what's amazing, as we help somebody else, I guarantee they're helping us back. That's why it feels so good sometimes to help somebody. We're not expecting it in return, but we get it in return. So I encourage you to find that team. So that team is so important because in August of 2023, my wife informed me that her mammogram and ultrasound came back as cancer. We heard those words, "You have breast cancer." Here we are, immersed in everyday life, and then all of a sudden we're standing at the water's edge for a race that we did not choose to enter. Did you choose that race, Marissa? Yeah. I didn't sign up for it. I don't remember registering for it, but it happens. And then we're all set to do a lumpectomy and maybe some radiation treatments. And the Friday before her Monday surgery, the surgeon calls that afternoon and says, by the way, your other 2 spots came back as cancerous, so we're going to need to cancel your surgery Monday, and we want you to see plastics, and my schedule will call you back, and we'll do a mastectomy later in the week. So this nice little course map that we were studying, means nothing anymore. So now we're in a race that we did not choose to enter, on a course that we have no idea what's in store for us. I'd love to say that I stepped right in with strength. I had fear, I had doubts, I had moments where I was unsure of what I needed to do. But having that strong why and having my encouragement team in place made that an incredible experience for both of us, because we were able to get through it by knowing who we could rely on. If there was such thing called the flow of caregiving, we were in it. It was, I won't say it's effortless, but it felt smooth, and we were able to focus on what was important, which was each other, what we needed for our kids, and how we need to move forward. So the why, that was number one, but then we had people in the right roles. I had some men that are in this room that helped me more than you can imagine. They sat with me. They didn't have to say words. So you think physical, something about just physically being with somebody doesn't mean you have to physically do anything. You just have to sit there with them. They didn't have to tell me any words. They were just there to allow me to process and to grieve and to not try to fix me. So I appreciate that. So as I am pouring into Marissa physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, I'm handing my cup back to the people in my life to say, I need physically to be filled up. Let's go for a run. I need emotionally, I just need you to listen to me and let me vent and cry and do whatever I need to do. Mentally, just help me process some of the things that I have going on that we need to do. We had meal trains set up. It was beautiful. And then spiritually, who are the ones that I could just text and say, hey, I just need a prayer. I'm struggling today. So I encourage you to find that team to be able to do that. I heard a stat probably about a month ago. It just floored me. That when a woman faces a long-term health illness, the man is 6 times more likely to leave that relationship. 6 times. I'd love to say that I don't think it's because they didn't care. I could be wrong. But I believe they didn't know how to care. They were never taught how to take off this armor or wetsuit or whatever they were wearing of their past experiences, their expectations, the behaviors they had picked up over the time. And they didn't have a group of people around them to hold them accountable and to be present. So they ran. That's why this matters. It's not about strength. It's about our role, understanding our roles, our needs, and the expectations that we give and receive. It's so important that we understand that and know that we're not in this alone. Too many caregivers I've seen from years of experience with home health, overwhelmed, failed, they didn't know what to do, and you offer help, and they gave me every excuse why we couldn't get that help. We need to be open and honest and say, look, I need help. I can't do this by myself. So we've talked about recognizing the wetsuits we're wearing, the bad habits we have. We talked about resetting, how we lean into why in our mission statement. We talked about replenish and how we fill up our cup when we're dumping out. As we approach the finish line, every race I entered, the PA announcer was yelling my name. The crowds, come on, where are the crowds? Come on, yeah. Recognition of the effort it took for me to get to that point. When Marissa finished her mastectomy and radiation treatment, 29 radiation treatments, she deserved the same. She needed a finish line event. So we created one for her with fans, a race bib, homemade medals, to honor her journey, the strength, to honor what she went through, and to honor that experience and the people that helped us to get there. One of the things I realized with all the races I've completed, the only thing better than crossing the finish line of a race was the ability to walk beside someone as they navigated their struggles and overcame their health events and crossed the finish line of whatever it is they were going to. I encourage you to do the same. So as we close, I want to challenge you to make one commitment. First of all, what wetsuit are you wearing? What are those past experiences, expectations, behaviors that you have picked up that may be interfering with certain relationships that you're in? What are those habits that you tend to want to put back on this wetsuit? Take a look at them. What is your why in life and in your relationships? And then who's on your team? And more importantly, whose team are you on? Because the way we're going to get at this caregiving stress and burnout is when people say to me, well, I'm not either. I'm not a caregiver, I'm not a care receiver. I'm really neither. There is somebody, I promise you, in your network that needs your help. And if they're on the front lines, they need you even more. So it's important and imperative that we step in and help that person. Again, it can be anything. It can be buying furniture for their house. It can just be calling and checking on them. It could be just sitting with them. It could be whatever it is. We need to do that because that's the only way we're going to take the stress that's up here and bring it down. And that's how we can get past that. And my last question is, whom do you know that can benefit from having their struggles shared and their victories celebrated? Thank you. God bless. And feels like they could use being honored by wearing his bib and crossing the finish line and getting a medal, because I want to honor you. We have fans here that hopefully are willing to honor you. No takers? We got one. All right. Get your sign. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to put this on you, Johnny. So who are you sharing for?
My friend's Kevin Wars. Okay. I live in Virginia.
Okay, I need some help. Who can help me? Let's stand. Come on, everybody stand. So what's in? I need somebody. I need two people down here. Now, this doesn't sound like a finish line. Come on, what's noise? Let's go! Come on down, cross the finish line. Let's go, Johnny! Good job. You're welcome. That's how we need to celebrate caregivers.